what's your topic?
So I was watching. I like my documentaries.
You do.
Pretty much the only thing I watch. And
where do you get them from?
Typically Netflix or Amazon. Yeah. And or on YouTube. There's a shit. There's a fucking metric shit ton of documentaries on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I was watching Ken Burns' The Roosevelts. Ken Burns, of course, and I'm curious since we have two film guys here, Ken Burns has to be completely unrivaled as a documentarian, right? Like, there's no one fucking even remotely on his level in terms of output and quality, right?
I don't know, but I will say that having watched a ton of varying degrees of documentary, some you might not even be able to call documentary on Netflix, they're not all created equal, and I'm sure Ken Burns is probably the top.
Well, Ken Burns is like, I'm gonna make a baseball documentary. Like, it's gonna be like 2.5 hours. Like, no, I'm gonna make like 30.
He pioneered what I believe is now known, like in Apple,
as the Ken Burns
effect.
Yeah,
where you would take it, all he would have is archivally a still photograph, but he would move the camera into it to give you at least a sense of like motion as you were watching a movie.
Yeah,
genius,
and a little bit of noise in the background too.
Like, I cannot tell you how many projects I've done where I've been sitting on the other end with like a creative director or someone who's like, from an agency, and they go, so we'll just do this and we're just going to Ken Burns it. And I'm like, what does that mean to you? Because it means a little bit something different to me, but
30-hour YouTube series.
Yeah, they just meant the picture.
Oh, I wish.
Like, okay, good, because I don't want to
Ken
make
Burns
30 hours of baseball.
Probably the greatest modern documentarian.
He's fucking awesome, and he's so good at what he does that the Roosevelts should have been like 35 or 40 hours long, and I would have watched the whole fucking thing. At 14 hours, I was like, this is way too short. I couldn't believe how short it was, actually.
I mean, because that's what he does, right? He doesn't just do like a 3-hour documentary. He does like an epic series of films.
Yeah. Like the Roosevelts was all about Teddy Roosevelt and then FDR and then Eleanor Roosevelt after FDR dies.
These are big people in America, by the way.
Thank you very much for helping me out with that.
Didn't know if they made it across.
They talk about a gentleman named Winston Churchill once or twice in the documentary.
Doesn't ring a bell.
So anyway, I'm watching this, and there's a moment in the documentary that really stuck with me, and I don't think it was a consequential part of the documentary at all, but they're talking about when Theodore Roosevelt takes over for McKinley after McKinley's assassinated, and Teddy Roosevelt's coming in, and he goes through his business, and then he chooses Taft as his replacement when he doesn't decide to run in 1908, and Taft comes in. And when the story goes that they're building at the White House the West Wing at that time, and the Oval Office. And that Theodore Roosevelt is walking through the Oval Office just like as it's being constructed. And I'm like, that's a fucking awesome visual, first of all. And then I'm like, so the White House, which really was first inhabited by John Adams, transcends all of this time. It was burned down by the British and all this kind of shit, but it's been a building. But the West Wing, and specifically the Oval Office, has taken on this really significant position in American politics and American history, right?
And it's interesting when you look at pictures of the White House, you're typically not seeing the West Wing. You're seeing the residence.
Exactly. The building is what they called. They didn't even call it the White House until like the 20th century. It was called the Executive Mansion. And yeah, like you can't really see, like if you look at it from an aerial view, what you see is that like the White House is fucking massive, and it, like what it's like all these tendrils that go all over the place. But like the White House itself is like where the president lives. Anyway, I was thinking about, okay, so the Oval Office, Teddy Roosevelt was the first man of consequence to walk in the Oval Office, and then Taft and Wilson and then Calvin Coolidge and Hoover and everyone else, Harding. So I was like, there's become a lot of history in this one building. And we often talk about the people we want to meet or the places we want to be in terms of a time, like, being at the Gettysburg Address or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I realized at that point as a lover of history that the Oval Office might be the most interesting place I can think of where you want to be a fly on the wall, where you want to go through the history and see all the fascinating things that happened there, whether it was Nixon recording every conversation he had in there, which was then his downfall, whether it was Clinton getting a blowjob from an intern in the Oval Office, whether it was...
That totally happened.
Yeah, like that. Like there's crazy shit that happened in that fucking room. That ran the gamut from Wilson conducting World War I and FDR conducting World War II from there, Truman dropping the atom bombs, Eisenhower doing all of his things, whatever, JFK, Bay of Pigs and all that stuff, all the way through today. And I was like, this is maybe the most fascinating space that I can think of where I would just like to be there and be able to rewind history and see all the crazy conversations and a lot of the illicit shit that happened there. Heads of state from all over the world happening there, fucking massive arguments and fallout happening in those places between people. I'm sure that every president has had sex in that room.
That's
I'm
what
sure.
I wanted to ask you, and now make it sound like
no.
Like,
I mean, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Right?
Crazy.
That's got to be the first fucking checklist.
If I
would be the first thing I did.
Get in here. That we're breaking this room
the
in right
thing
now.
that I find fascinating about that, though, like talk about like the Clinton blowjob, is like just how do you logistically pull that off? Because there's there's 3 different doors into that room. There's a shitload of windows, right? There's fucking Secret Service everywhere. Like I don't know how Clinton Was he like, let me just make
He's
sure
just
that-
like doors
he's
open.
Like, yeah, he's like shuts doors like don't bother me for the next 20 minutes. Like closes all. Like how do you even?
You have to
How do you even get
It's
away with it?
He's Well, it's the Secret Services and probably his chief of staff are all complicit in this.
They must have been. Right?
And-
They gotta
Yeah,
have a
because-
code word, right? Like banana.
Well, yeah, but
It's
President's
banana
code,
time.
banana.
The chief of staff fucking has to because the chief of staff's office
It goes
is
right into the
immediately
West Wing.
adjacent to the Oval Office.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean it's so I was just curious like what you guys thought about like what space would fascinate you in that sense because to me there's like serious history going on. To your point, like it was amazing. They were talking about, and we knew a lot about Lucy Mercer and everything with FDR's affair. I mean, FDR had an affair with a woman for like 40 years, you know, and Eleanor Roosevelt found out when he got back from World War I when he was traveling overseas and swore off that like he swore he would never see her again. Yet he was seeing her for like the next 30 years, and she was with him when he died. You know, and this was facilitated by Eleanor Roosevelt's daughter. So there's like all these fucked up things like where Eleanor Roosevelt was basically being like she was just going behind her back for fucking decades. And everyone around him was complicit. I'm saying that because I think with Clinton's situation, for instance, there was plenty of people that knew. And they just let it happen, whatever. But anyway, that's my space. And I'm curious, like, what you guys think. Like, I would just love to hop in there during a Nixon conversation. I'd love to hop in there when Jimmy
Well, you
Carter's
kind of
falling
got
apart.
to a little bit because of the tapes, right? I mean, you didn't get everything, but that's as close as you'll ever get, I would imagine, is the Nixon tapes.
Yeah.
Which were all recorded in the Oval Office.
Indeed. And for people that don't know yet, Nixon recorded every conversation in the Oval Office because he wanted to have these archives, and then he realized that the archives were going to fucking ruin him. And they did. So, and then there was 18 minutes missing on one of them. No one ever knows what was on those.
Area 51.
Area 51 probably, yeah. So anyway, I wanted to throw it to you
Code
guys.
banana.
Maybe you have a similar answer. I don't
An
know.
18-minute code banana.
I don't have a particular place, maybe, but I think I always thought it would be fascinating to be like on the Paramount lot, like the entire decade of the '80s, just seeing all the movies that were shot there and just being in that world. Like LA in the '80s for film was would have been just a trip to see all that happening. I don't know. I mean, I was fortunate. I've only been on a lot a few times. I interned on Paramount when I was in college, and just the amount of energy that's going around now is probably amazing. But I can't even imagine when like Spielberg was shooting Jaws, you know, just being able to maybe happen by that set. Like, and that's part of the fun of seeing. And Gary, you've been on these huge.
You know about movies, right? You've seen
Yeah,
these
and it's
huge
funny
studio
because my
lines.
answer, I'm trying to find a good answer, and it's weird. Mine's almost kind of a weird combination of the two. One of the things that I've always tried to do during my years in the film business, and I've never been able to do it, is even just get onto like an Oval Office set, just like a fake one. Because you think about it, any given time, there's like 5 or 6 up anywhere,
Yeah.
right? Because there's so many shows and movies, and some obviously overlap, like they build it, and a bunch of
Sure.
different shows will use them. But at any given time, there's like I guarantee you right now, there's someone is shooting something in an Oval Office set right now, and just the idea of like just being in the fake one, because you're never going to get in the real one, but just the idea of being in the fake one seems really fun. I worked on the Warner Brothers lot during the final season of The West Wing, and I was constantly trying to get over there. I didn't know anyone who worked on the show, but I was constantly trying to get over there to like see if I could sneak onto the West Wing set, because even just the fake version of it
Right.
would be fascinating.
Well, that was
great show.
that great. Remember when Al Gore hosted SNL and they did like a digital, not before they were like digital shorts, but like a standalone package or whatever, where he went and visited the West Wing set.
Right.
And he walked into the Oval Office and he's like, and they're like giving the tour. He's like, "Can you just be quiet for a second?" And he sat down, and then, like, picked up the phone and acted like he was calling people.
This is hard.
Well, that's the problem. Is like the Oval Office. Like I'm trying to when it's boiled down to a room, right? That's
Just
when
a space, a place. Yeah,
like because
that's
I would think,
undefined.
like I've always thought it would have been fascinating to be like again like a ghost or like in this 3D virtual world to be able to see something, experience it without experiencing it, like Titanic. Like I would have been fascinated. The movie was good, don't get me wrong, but I mean like actually what was that like? You know what I mean? Like what was happening there and all this different stuff. Different, similar to you, I guess, would be like it would have been awesome to be able to be omniscient during like Ghostbusters, right? Like be the fly on Dan Aykroyd's collar or whatever through
Yeah.
all that process of it,
Just hearing
getting
the guys
getting
shooting the
into
shit
it,
in between
how they're
takes.
going back and forth with like all the different rewrites and stuff like that.
You say it's funny you say that. A lot of I actually think you can get even a better version of that experience just years later. Like there's a fascinating, since you mentioned Ghostbusters, there's a fascinating oral history of Ghostbusters
Oh, yeah.
published a year or two ago because of the anniversary, and it's fascinating to read. As exciting as you think it would actually be to like be there on the set,
Yeah.
most of the time you're on a movie set, it is boring as shit. It is really, really, really dull. Like there's so much technical shit that has to happen just to set up. Like this is why it takes they will shoot for like 12 hours a day, and they'll come away with maybe 20 minutes, of stuff that they can use. So think about what's happening the other 11 hours and 40 minutes that's that's happening, and it can be incredibly dull. It's a tough one. I keep feeling like I keep dragging the conversation into the gutter because we were talking about blowjobs earlier. Like, I would be fascinating to see famous people on the toilet. There was an there was an artist who did this recently. It was fascinating. He was a really, really good artist. I don't know if you saw this, but he drew really, really amazing. Everything as good as the quality of art would be good enough for a presidential portrait, but it was basically like the Queen or Obama or various people just sitting on the toilet, and because you think everybody does it,
yeah.
but you don't. It just seems like such a weirdly incongruous image. Like at some point, once a day, twice a day, hopefully, it's healthy and it's all good. But Obama has to pull his pants down and sit on the toilet and take a shit. Yeah. And you just think wow, it's a very humanizing thing, and there's a reason why we don't share it publicly. But I just think it's not in itself interesting. I don't really care about what wiping technique he would use or anything. So a president wipes his ass. It wouldn't be actually that. It's just a weirdly private thing that I think makes even the largest YouTube star would become just a normal person when they're
doing their business,
riding the porcelain bus.
Sure.
Now, see, I'm going to disagree with you on one thing. There is, I would like to know how he wipes because I bet it would be some advanced shit. Does he have someone that does it for him? Is there a bidet?
No.
Is there a bidet?
There should be a bidet.
The Queen might. I wouldn't be surprised if the Queen had someone who does it for her. I mean, she's 80-something years old.
Yeah, she probably can't get back there as much as she used to.
Yeah.
Maybe she doesn't want to.
I bet you she has either a bidet or there's something going on there where it's basically
There's
done.
definitely something up for sure.
Again, I don't want to go off track because this is a fascinating topic, but I do wish that the bidet were more popular.
Yeah.
I really
The
wish.
bidet's fucked up. You're crazy.
Bidet's awesome.
Are you
Bidet's
kidding me?
awesome.
We
I'm not a
literally
fan.
have a topic about this.
I know.
Was it episode
Episode
2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great piece of technology that just never got picked up in the
No,
States.
I don't need. No.
No, I'm telling you.
It
you're
makes
missing
you
out.
clean, Colin.
Everything back there
Wow.
can be squeaky clean. Right now, I'm pretty sure it's not squeaky. Well, maybe yours because you're pretty anal
I'm
retentive
thorough.
when it comes to your
I am
anal.
anal retentive.
You're very anal retentive.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is a harder question to answer than I thought, but just because I'm trying to go places where there's density of history. The only other answer I could possibly think of is the Vatican. That's basically it. And because
Mine was a Nintendo.
That was next on my list.
I would love to, and I'd have to be a fly that speaks Japanese. But been around in the Nintendo boardroom or office, right, to see and I'm talking about from the beginning to now, every decision when they originally bring in prototypes when they're talking about partnering with Sony.
There are certain when someone gave me the making of Star Wars books. The J.R. Rinsler books.
Oh, those are
they're
excellent.
fascinating. And they've got a lot of great transcripts. And again, it's these moments where this is something where you'd be fascinated to be in the room. I remember I got a chill just reading it. So it's George Lucas and Larry Kasdan and Richard Marquand, who's the director of Return of the Jedi, sitting around talking, just breaking the story, just figuring shit out. And they know that Luke has to have a lightsaber, right? Because he needs one in the story. But we know that he lost it at the end of The Empire Strikes Back, right? Because it goes off with his hand. And so they're talking about trying to figure this out. Okay, we want to explain. We need him to have a lightsaber in this scene. But how do we make sure that the audience doesn't get confused and go, well, I thought he lost that. Is that the same one? You never get a good enough look at it to really see if it's a different design or whatever. And so I think it was Kasdan who said, well, why don't we just make it a different color blade? Why don't we make it green? And they went, okay, fine. And you go, oh shit, that's the and now that was the moment where they decided that thing that became a part of movie history that we all recognize. And it's just guys sitting around a table just going, yeah, fine. Let's
Whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
awesome.
See, the
That's
question,
awesome.
the question's hard for me because I don't think there's one space because I feel like a lot of things that I'm interested in kind of move around. This is the most Tim answer to any of this stuff, but I would love to be a fly that isn't in one room, but would just follow Bernie Burns around for the last 10 years. There's so many questions. I'm such a fan of Rooster Teeth and all that stuff, but I'm also a fan of the business behind it all and to see how he and all of his partners kind of created this whole space that we now have learned from and now we are doing.
Yeah.
But I would love to actually have been there and see all the ups and the downs that we obviously don't know, and to see how all that stuff happened and how what choices had to be made and all those things. But that wasn't a one space, And the Nintendo thing, I doubt there's the Nintendo room.
Exactly. There's not
just
hey,
one room.
we're about to have some important conversation. Let's go to the room.
Yeah, where's Mr. Nintendo? Let's get him in here. It'll be this whole thing.
No, but just being
He's
in
doing
that,
Let's Plays with Greg and Tim again. Get him out of there.
no, but just being in that world during that time and era, right? Where everything was real, especially for Nintendo, where they were on the cutting edge of innovation, where they were about to revolutionize the market. by releasing the NES and making the idea of having a gaming console in your living room like or not having a gaming console in your living room unfathomable for any kid, right? The second you saw that thing, you were like, I have to have this in my life, right? So understanding like what their marketing strategy was for that and how they were going to challenge Atari and how they were going to challenge some of the other like the PC in general.
Behemoth that was the Sega Master System.
Right, exactly. That would be fascinating, especially if you're a lover of games. But yeah, Tim, I don't know. Yours is a weird. You're global, man. I don't know. You're in a weird space.
You're global.
It'd be hard to pinpoint one place for you though. That's what
No,
I'm
I
saying.
know. Oh,
Except
yeah.
maybe L.A. circa 10 years ago when they were filming a small film called The Fast and the
You
Furious.
guys do need to do the oral history of the Fast and
Well, I
Furious.
mean, really, what it would be at the house. I'd want to just.
Oh, that house. Yeah.
I would have wanted
It's
to
a
be
real
there for
house,
all
right?
of the barbecues.
Isn't
yeah.
that a real
I can
house
only
in LA?
imagine that real barbecues have taken place at that table.
Do you think that for a rap
Wait,
party
so
they
now
were
I'm
like,
confused.
let's
Are you
just
talking
throw a
about
rap
in
party?
the universe? Or are you talking about at the filming? Or are you talking about that house is the real barbecues with just the normal people who live there?
Well, I hope you know, Greg, that The Fast and Furious is actually a documentary.
Oh, that is a documentary.
Did you not know that?
I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
So all those
crazy.
things are one and the same.
I've got a good one. I'd like, because, we've all been, apart from the toilet stuff, we've all been very above board. I like the idea of being a fly on the wall, like Rolling Stones tour bus, like 1968.
Oh, that is a good
Just
one.
check that shit out. Because that would be crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like
You'd
that
see
would
some shit.
that one would be like you can't go back from that. You would see stuff and be like, my life is so non-important and non-exciting in comparison to this that I got to end it. I'm done. That would be fascinating. Any of those big bands in the
for
70s
sure.
would be awesome. But yeah, Rolling Stones specifically because
That's a good one.
those cats partied.
Oh, yeah. They partied
They
hard.
still party.